Hello, everyone. Thank you for letting me spend some time with you. I know I say I don't shy away from the hard questions. Sometimes maybe I should. But, you know, you don't know what you don't know, right? Before I get too far, don't forget to push all the good buttons that you usually push, right? Like, share, subscribe. And I also need to remind you, books are available at authorjerrymitchell.com. Or you can go to givegod90.com and follow the links from there. I've been getting more than a few questions about polygamy, marrying more than one person, taking on more than one wife. And it always is taking on more than one wife, not taking on more than one husband. Although I have met a couple of women who probably need an entire army to work to keep them in the lifestyle they would like to become accustomed to, right? I know a few men like that too. But anyway, let's dive into something because it seems to circle around more than it should. Polygamy is having more than one wife, right? It's pretty simple. It's different than bigamy, which is the offense of marrying more than one person at a time. That can go either way. The difference is subtle, it's technical, but there's a difference. All right. The people who promote polygamy, well, they're going to say, well, it's okay in the Bible. Well, yeah, they're kind of correct. Where they make their error, though, is the way it's practiced, how it was done, the way our Creator chose to manage it while the mixed multitude were at Mount Sinai. That's where we get the instructions for it. And then, of course, we have the strict Christian evangelist who will say, marriage is between one man and one woman. And they look to Genesis 2:24. For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united with his wife, and they will become one flesh. Now, before sin and death entered the world, that was also indeed correct, a structure that our Creator established. However, in the fallen world that we live in, filled with sin and death, mankind took it upon itself to modify the arrangement. Our Creator looked down and he says, I've got to manage this the best way I can. And he did. He did. Now, before Moses repeats the instructions that were given to him by our Creator, mankind was doing a lot of things that we shouldn't be doing, right? A lot of things that today we would find offensive because there was no moral law established as we know it today. Believe it or not, secular, atheist, the moral law you get comes from the Bible. It's that simple. Today, we might consider marrying someone from our own family forbidden, with good reason. But very early in history, there wouldn't have been much of a choice, right? Cain, for instance, where did his wife come from? It was one of his sisters because he didn't have a choice other than to marry another daughter of Adam. It's that simple. Adam had many, many children, sons and daughters. Didn't have a choice. We hear it and we kind of cringe a little bit because it doesn't set real comfortable with us. Think about very early post-flood. Noah and his sons get off the ark. They were the only people around. If you want to raise a family and have children, who are you going to go to? Who are you going to marry? What could be your niece, your nephew, your cousin, your whatever? You didn't have a choice. However, by the time the mixed multitude came to Mount Sinai, there were a lot of people in the world. So the instructions on how to manage marriage, were given, but they're not all given in chronological order. They're not all in the same place. So there's a lot of confusion that concerns polygamy. Now, I'll say this, while a one-man, one-woman marriage is still the strongest family unit, there also needed to be some protection for the widow who had no children to care for in her old age. Or, and this is something a lot of men don't like to think about, if the woman was already old and she was widowed and had no children to care for her, somebody needed to step up, right? Not a lot of people were willing to do it. Not a lot of people were willing to do it. Now, if they were a lovely young woman, husband died, she had no children, there were no single men around, maybe she had a nice house, nice farm, right? That changes things a little bit. We're going to see that here in a few minutes. But the same instructions applied to an old woman as well. And not a lot of people were willing to step up. Not a lot of people were willing to say, I'll make this covenant, I'll make this commitment. It just didn't happen. Deuteronomy 25:5. When brothers dwell together and one of them dies without a son, the widow must not marry outside the family. Her husband's brother is to take her as wife and fulfill the duty of the brother-in-law for her. Now, the word brother here doesn't always mean a direct brother. It can mean someone simply from the same family, the same tribe, if you will. The word there is actually kinsman. So it's often translated brothers, but it's someone from the same tribe, if you will. If a man from Judah died, left a widow with no children, somebody from the tribe of Judah would need to step up, usually someone very close to the family, right? But if there was no unmarried man willing to say, I'll do this, then it was up to a married man to enter into a covenant relationship, care for her. And if she was young enough to bear children, it was his duty to try to give her children. And here's where a lot of people leave out something very important. In Deuteronomy 25:6, the very next verse, the first son she bears will carry on the name of the dead brother, so that his name will not be blotted out from Israel. You see, a son would not carry the name of the living father, it would carry the name of the dead husband. In other words, you'd be raising a child who would not bear your name. If your name was David, the deceased name was John, the child would be whatever you named it, maybe Eli, son of John, not son of David. Makes a big difference. And it even gets more unpleasant for a lot of men, because in Exodus 21:10 and 11, if he takes another wife, he must not reduce her food, clothing, or marital rights of his first wife. However, if he does not provide her with these things, she's free to go with no monetary payment. Here's where a lot of people get confused. What this means is you needed to provide equally for the second wife. Equally. You didn't live in the same house. You had to provide the second wife her own house. Clothing that was equal to what your first wife was wearing. Didn't have to be better, it had to be equal. Food that had to be equally good to what your first wife was used to. It isn't practiced then the way a lot of people want to practice it today. It was intentionally something of a burden to have a second wife. Now, I'm making a little bit of fun right here. I know a lot of divorced men, okay, who remarried, but they're still paying alimony to the first wife. Okay, that's kind of what it was like. They don't like paying alimony they're basically paying for another house, clothes, food. They don't like it. They don't enjoy it. But that is exactly what we see it outlined as biblically. In Ruth chapter 4, we read that Boaz goes to the gate, and an unnamed kinsman redeemer comes to talk to him about Ruth and Naomi. right? The Redeemer's at first willing to purchase the land, but he didn't want anything to do with marriage, right? Now, these people didn't live in a vacuum. He may have known that Ruth had her eyes set on Boaz. And he's like, I'm going to pass this up. Boaz, you take care of her. You deal with it. So Boaz was able to purchase the land, marry Ruth. The first in line passed his right along. So what we see is not a marriage free-for-all that a lot of people want to portray it as, right? Taking another wife is an extremely serious commitment that very few people wanted to do. The provision was there not to belittle women, not to put women down, not to make them subject to man, not to make them less than men. That's not what it's about. The provision is there to protect the childless widow, whether she's young or old. It didn't matter. That's what it's for. That's what it's for. Now, I know I'm not answering every little question that a lot of people are going to have. But if you do have other questions, let me know either in the comments or email me. Contact pages there at givegod90.com. You see, sometimes polygamy is bigamy. Sometimes it isn't. It all depends on how it is applied and how it is practiced. And if you apply it and practice it biblically, not like a lot of people do today, then it should be accepted. However, if you're going to apply it and practice it like a lot of people want to today, it's a no-no. Don't do it. Don't even think about it, no matter what your doctrine says, because your religious doctrine might not agree with biblical doctrine here. That is something to think about until next time. And until then, I do wish you many, many blessings, everyone.